amazing patriots. So today I have the privilege and the honor of interviewing an amazing and awesome man, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. Hi, Dr. G. How are you?
I'm very excited. Thank you for having me today. You are a very rare individual, a super patriot, one of the youngest super patriots I know. So it's a pleasure to be with you today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you on. So I'm going to ask you a few questions today, if that's okay, and we'll talk a little bit. Is that all right with you? All right. So, as we all know, Kamala Harris is a terrible DA, especially for California when she was in that position. And she knows nothing about how to run a country, and she definitely did not rise on her own merit in the ranks. So how do you think she got to where she is now?
All right, the tough things up front. Just ask Willie Brown. She was a nobody. She gets into an affair with the married Willie Brown, a very powerful politician in California, who gives her two sinecure, no-show political positions, and that's how it began. If you follow the amazing work of my friend Jennifer Horn, who has the morning show in Los Angeles on Salem, she's documented this woman's career, if you can call it a career, and she's labeled her very correctly as the most transactional politician out there. Yes, she's a Democrat. Yes, she is promoting the insane radical agenda of the left, but she has no ideology. It's about the acquisition of power, doing whatever it takes, whether it's in the bedroom or elsewhere, to maintain power and to acquire power. If you look at her record, she's not left-wing. She's not right-wing. Look at the fact that she put 1,500 black men in prison for smoking weed, for small amounts of personal weed usage. Then, as a senator, she's interviewed on a podcast about smoking weed herself, and she giggles and she laughs and she said, "Oh yes, and I inhaled, unlike Bill Clinton." So that's one side. Then, if you look at what she did to cover up and protect the Catholic Church, and I say this as a Catholic, she denied assistance as the DA in San Francisco to the families of numerous children who were trying to sue the Catholic Church for sexual exploitation. And why did she do that? Not because she's a conservative or protecting, Catholic institutions. No, because politically in San Francisco back then, the Catholic Church was a very, very powerful organization, and she wanted the patronage of that, powerful organization. So whether it's stealing my former boss, President Trump's border wall, which is insane. The woman who's helped allow 20 million illegals into the country now wants to build the wall, or stealing his no tax on tips. This is a woman who has no ideology except the accrual and the maintenance of power.
Absolutely. And she's blaming President Trump for the border crisis that we have right now in our country, when President Trump is the one that built the wall and ended catch and release. And the only policies that she has are the ones that she stole from President Trump, so really she has none at all. So she's been VP for almost 4 years, and she keeps saying that if she becomes president, or in her words, when she becomes president, she'll make all these changes, but a lot of the changes that she promises to make, she has the power to do right now. So what's your reaction to that? Why do you think that she's doing that?
Well, because she has to distance herself from the disaster that has been the last 3.5 years. Think of what's happened. When we were in the White House, thanks to President Trump, we had no new wars for 4 years. We had the strongest economy the world had ever seen. By the time COVID hit, especially under Title 42 provisions, we basically shut down the border. A mosquito's backside wasn't getting through the border without us knowing it and us stopping it. And instead of that, we have war in the Ukraine now. We have the greatest loss of Jewish life since the Holocaust on October the 7th. We have a rising China. Iran not only on the cusp of nuclear weapons, but funding Pakistani nationals in America to assassinate President Trump. We have record inflation. Gas hits $7 in California under the Biden administration. And then we have what else? We have apartment blocks in Aurora, Colorado. You watch the footage being taken over by Venezuelan gangs who are now demanding rent from the poor Americans that live in that benighted block. So she has to make people believe that she's not the vice president. I mean, if you look at the DNC convention in Chicago, I mean, it was like watching the Twilight Zone or some bizarro alternate universe, the Matrix, that they kept using the phrase, we're going to turn the corner. We're going to have a new chapter. I mean, when Ben Stiller comes out of the convention and says, I'm so excited about everything changing. And it's like, dude, you do know that she's the vice president now, right? I mean, what do they think? That she's some kind of politician from another party? They've been in power. Biden completely collapsed during the debate with my former boss. As a last resort, they had to parachute her in. And think about this irony, Jordan. They have lectured us for nigh on 4 years. President Trump is a threat to democracy. Okay, who voted for Kamala to be the nominee? Not one American has voted for her to be the presidential candidate. Not one Democrat has voted for her. She magically was donated Joe Biden's delegates at the convention. Who's the real threat to democracy?
Exactly, they are. And Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, they have no idea what they're doing. Kamala Harris, to put it nicely, isn't the most intelligent woman, and Joe Biden simply does not know what he's doing. The reason that he is not in the race anymore is because he physically cannot lead a country or even run to do that. That's the reason that we need to get President Trump back in office, because neither of them know what they're doing. So why do you think, just like Joe Biden, that Kamala Harris is getting away with not having to answer any questions for the press? She did one CNN interview, and that's it. And the whole time she was being babysat by Tim Walz, who also has no clue what he's doing. So what's your take on that?
Well, that wasn't an interview. I mean, that was 26 minutes long. And allegedly there's another 30, 40 minutes worth of footage. It was pre-recorded. Where's the rest of the footage? Why haven't we been allowed to see it? And when you have questions like, oh, you have a photograph at home of you and your nieces. How does that lovely photograph affect what you think about? And it's like, when was President Trump asked about photographs with his nephews and nieces? I mean, why is this happening? Because, and apologies for the language, the mainstream legacy media are prostitutes for the Democrat Party. I mean, these are the people, I just played a clip on my national radio show today, who are still peddling, to this day, still peddling 4 years later, the Hunter Biden laptop story is Russian misinformation. Despite the fact that Biden's own DOJ was for of the Hunter Biden laptops in the tax evasion case against him in Delaware and in the gun charge case. So there is no mainstream media. There is a laptop just extension of the Democrat Party that is CNN, Washington Post, Daily Beast, New York Times, The Atlantic. These people have an utter contempt for the average American. I mean, look at this moment. It was so telling. In the recent primaries, I live in the Commonwealth of Virginia. In the recent primaries, the results were coming in from the exit polls in Virginia. And CNN had three commentators on. They had Joy Reid, who's just a mental case. They had Rachel Maddow, who, talked about how she was quivering and floating above her chair when Biden was inaugurated. That's how, unbiased she is. And there's Jen Psaki, who's a former White House press secretary for Biden, and they laugh at each other and they say, I don't get it. People are coming out of the primaries and they're telling the exit poll workers that their number one concern is illegal immigrants. And then Jen Psaki laughs and says, I live in Virginia. I don't understand it. Virginia doesn't have a border with Mexico. Why do Americans in Virginia care about illegal immigrants? And then Rachel Maddow says, well, maybe it's the border with West Virginia. I mean, it's like Marie Antoinette. It's like, let them eat cake. Oh, those peasants care about illegal migration? I mean, I'm eating my foie gras in my restaurant in Georgetown. Don't they understand how wonderful everything is? They have utter... Look, let me cut to the chase. In America today, the Democrat Party doesn't give a damn for what they said what they care for. They don't care for women. 60% of the women and children being trafficked across the border are being raped. They don't care about minorities. Legal migrants to America are the ones hit the hardest by illegal immigration. And they don't care about the working class. This is a bi-coastal elite of rich white people in New York, in LA, in Washington, D.C. And the great kind of poetic irony of the last 10 years is that a billionaire from Manhattan represents the working class more than any Democrat has done in the last 50 years. I've seen it with my own eyes. I flew with President Trump to Youngstown, Ohio on Air Force One. We drove from the military base to this stadium. And on the way to the stadium, all we saw on one side was disused steel mill after disused steel mill. This is the Rust Belt. And we get to the stadium and President Trump is in the back with the VIPs at a meet and greet, and I go into the pit, into the main part of the arena. I start talking to people, taking selfies, and I realize everyone here is a working class former Democrat whose granddad was a Democrat, whose parents were Democrats, who worked in the steel mills. And when he comes out on stage with Melania, the billionaire from New York couldn't start his speech because the crowd spontaneously erupted with chants of USA, USA, USA. Working class, I mean, look at it. He goes to the Bronx. He goes to New Jersey. He has 100,000 people at his events. He goes to, think about this, Harlem. This is when the Democrats should have realized they're in trouble. He goes to a bodega in Harlem where that poor bodega, that immigrant bodega owner, was stabbed by this lunatic. And he goes there, and a little black kid, 10 years old, starts chanting, "We love you, Trump!" And then the little Hispanic girl behind him says, "We love you, Trump!" And then the black and minority and white adults join in the chant. And that's in Harlem. That's the reality of today's politics.
You are so right. And isn't it ironic that even after all of that, they still call President Trump racist? Isn't it ironic that they act like he is separating people when our country, since Obama, has been separated constantly by race?
I am a legal immigrant to the United States, and I arrived here in 2008, just before Obama was elected. And when I arrived and I started working as a civil servant, as a professor for the Defense Department, there wasn't racial tension in America in 2008. Yeah, there were maybe individual idiot racists, but racially we were a nation doing amazingly. And then whether it's the beer summit, whether it's Obama calling the police department in Boston, Massachusetts, in Cambridge, idiots and racists, that man engendered Obama, the black man Americans elected, proving that we're not a racist nation, started to divide us, because that's critical race theory, that's DEI. And then along come the Democrats. The most wicked thing of all, beyond all the sexual abuse and rape that is being committed by the cartels and by the hyenas, the coyotes today. Think of this one thing when you think of who they say they are. Why has Biden and Kamala, why have they let more than 20 million illegals into this country? There's only one reason. They are such bigots, truly racists. And they've said this, they've admitted they want to do this. They want to naturalize and give citizenship to every single one of those illegals because, and here's the bigotry, they are convinced if your skin color is brown, you will vote for Democrats. And don't take my word for it. Listen to the biggest racist of all. On a black podcast, Joe Biden literally says, quote, if you vote for Trump and you don't vote for me, you ain't black. That's bigotry. The idea that the shade of your skin determines your political identity, that means you are a racist.
Absolutely. And not only is that all about race, but it's only been getting worse over the years from BLM to now. Our country is truly going downhill under this administration. And if Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are elected, it will only continue to get worse. This election is so incredibly important. And so going back to something I talked about earlier, that the only policies that Kamala Harris has are the ones that she steals from President Trump. So why do you think that there are so many people in our country that don't open their eyes to this, that don't see it?
Wow. I really think it's indoctrination, and it's also wanting to avoid pain. If being a Democrat is like being an alcoholic, when does an alcoholic start to recover? It's the hardest step of all. It's not the not drinking. It's when they say publicly, I am an alcoholic. You have to admit that you're wrong and your worldview is wrong, and having another drink is bad. If you're a Democrat, you have bought into a worldview that is objectively evil. So agreeing to open borders so women and children can be raped, agreeing to transgender ideology so young girls can have their breasts removed in the name of happiness, or young girls can have their sporting careers destroyed in one race because Will Thomas says his name is Leah. That worldview, when you wake up, if you wake up, you have to admit it's all wrong. You have to take responsibility for being wrong about everything. And people don't want to do that. They prefer to just live in what is a cult. I mean, we know this is a cult. Look at Senator Fetterman. John Fetterman can't speak English. He has a brain aneurysm. He's a vegetable on the stage. And he's elected senator instead of a incredibly successful legal immigrant who is a TV superstar as well as being a former surgeon. But they pick the guy who looks like a hobo who lives in his parents' basement. This isn't a political party. This isn't about me bashing Democrats, because it's not about Democrats. This is not a party, it's a cult. This is not. JFK or Scoop Jackson would not be allowed into this party. How do I know this? Try one thing. Try to say as a Democrat, okay, abortions, but not in the third trimester. If you say not in the third trimester, you will be kicked out of the Democrat Party. That tells you it's a cult. 800 million abortions a year in America, but we can't say, when you're 8 months pregnant, you're actually killing a baby. That's a recognizable human being. You can't make that statement in today's Democrat Party. So really, we have to understand it's not politics, it's indoctrination.
Absolutely. But the thing about this administration and this party or cult, as you like to say, is that they don't care. That's the problem. They don't care about the human life. They care about making themselves out to be something they are not and just climbing up the ladder of power. Because that's all they care about. They care about life being handed to them on a silver platter because they think they deserve it. So, when President Trump was in office, where he should rightfully be right now, before it was stolen, how would his past policies and current policies differ from those of Harry Biden? What's the difference? How is our country healthier with President Trump than it is now?
Well, it's very easy. You just have to go back to this is, I love this when they say he's a threat to democracy, he's going to be a big dictator, and there was this tweet yesterday from some lunatic about, the Handmaid's Tale, and you're all going to be forced to have babies, and you go, and I retweeted it and I said, dude, my former boss was president for 4 years. Are you smoking Hunter Biden's crack pipe? What are you talking about? Dictatorship. We didn't send former Obama administration White House officials to prison like they did with my colleagues Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro. So it's very easy to know what a second Trump administration would look like, God willing, if we win, if we do our part. It's prosperity and safety. We got America free again. Look at one thing. When President Trump came into office, he said, I'm not going to sign a new executive order unless we first rescind two. So there's far too many, there's far too much regulation. Businesses are, being burdened. If you want me to do something new, you've got to take back two prior executive orders before I sign a new one. And we said, oh, that's really interesting. It wasn't even the end of the first year. We were 8 months in, and that figure wasn't 2-1. It was 22-1. For every new executive order that empowered the president and took some new action, he made sure that 22 existing prior executive orders were rescinded. What happened as a result? The economy exploded. Whether it's small businesses, fracking, energy. For the first time in American history, the lifeblood of our nation, energy, we had so much of it, we were exporting energy. We weren't forced to buy it from OPEC. We weren't forced to grovel like we are today to communist regimes like Venezuela and say, please, can we buy your very expensive, bad quality oil? We were selling the sweetest oil to other people because we had more than we needed. When it came to national security, the man they said is going to be a warmonger prevented war for 4 years. Not only that, did something stunning in the Middle East, brought the Abraham Accords with half a dozen nations that we thought were, or had been told, was impossible. President Trump, and not only that, with only the support of 3 members of his cabinet, moved the embassy to Jerusalem and recognized that city as the capital of the eternal state of the Israeli people. So if you want a glimpse of what to expect if we win, God willing, just wind the clock back 8 years and remember how amazing. When President Trump was in office, gas was $1.87. Inflation was under 2%. Now it's really 10%, and gas is 100% more expensive. The best case scenario where I live is that gas is twice as expensive as it was when we were in the White House. Think of this one metric. This is shocking. And if you vote for Kamala after this, you're a cretin or you're a cult member. The average mortgage in 2020 in America, the average monthly mortgage payment was $800. Under Biden, thanks to inflation, it is now $1,700. That is a 100+% increase on the biggest payment Americans make every single month. Do you want that to continue, or do you want to go back to the way things were?
Exactly. It's really time for Americans, and especially my generation, to wake up, look at the past, see how things were better, and if you don't know how things were back then, do your research. If you were too young to know then, do your research so you know right now. We are in the now, and we have to start looking at our future rather than focusing on the past and what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have done to our country. So, what do you think? So, back to the topic of Kamala Harris and Tim Walz not knowing what they're doing. They want if they are elected into office, whether honestly or not, which if they did, it would most likely be not. Um, d- they would completely destroy our country, as we already know. But as far as the debate, do you think it'll even happen? Do you think Kamala Harris will be woman enough to show up?
With or without her fat white male babysitter. I don't know. I mean, this week the noise is coming out of the campaign that, oh, we can't agree to having live mics and all this other stuff, and we need to have notes, and they are kicking and screaming. I don't know. I think, look, anything's possible in this insane day and age. I don't think she can get away with not debating President Trump, especially after the news on Friday that Juan Merchan, the political hack of a fake judge in New York, has blinked and decided to postpone President Trump's sentencing to after the election. She really has to take the stage or deal with the blowback of running from... So here's what's going to happen. If she doesn't debate, then even Democrats are going to say, or normal Democrats are going to say, you want to be president, but you can't stand on a stage for 90 minutes with the person you're running against? You're so brat and your vibes are so dope, but you can't debate the person who was the president. She might try and avoid it, but it's going to get harder and harder.
Exactly. And Kamala Harris seems to think that because she's keeping up with the trends and trying to connect with my generation, that would automatically make her an amazing fit for president. Well, a newsflash to her, you actually have to know what you're doing and know how to run a country in order to take over. So, I know you were talking earlier about the women's vote and the Gen Z vote. Do you think that my generation and women are more concerned about the singular policy of abortion than they are with the safety and prosperity of our country?
Sadly, I have to say that. You need to realize how much, and your mother and all your friends and relatives have to be super proud of you. You are you are the great exception to the rule. If you look at, and Charlie Kirk, my colleague, has lots of polling data on this. If you look at your generation or slightly older, like 20 to 30, there's a very interesting trend line occurring. Young men are heavily moving towards conservatism. And that's kind of understandable, because if you've been told for 10 years that you're the problem, you're white, you're male, you're heterosexual, you're the problem, sooner or later you're going to say, no, sorry, I'm not going to, be guilted into believing things that aren't true about myself. And so the future of conservatism looks really bright when it comes to young men joining us. However, and it's a big however, your female compatriots are trending wildly in the opposite direction. So, wokeism, pro-abortion, open borders, transgender lunacy has got unswerving support amongst young women. And maybe you can explain it to me better, but there seems to be this group dynamic where you have to look nice, you have to virtue signal, and as a result, you have to agree with these insane conventional wisdoms like a man can be a girl and open borders are good and Republicans are bad and they're racists. So there's a kind of bifurcation of the sexes. Do you have a theory as to why young women are trending in the wrong direction?
I think it's because so many women, especially in my generation, and like you said, a little older, have been brainwashed to believe that because us as conservatives, that we value life before even birth, that we are against women's rights. I mean, I have been told sorry, wrong way to word that. White people have been told for so long that, oh, you're white? Okay, you're racist. Women, you value life? How dare you? But the second we value life of people from our country rather than those that are coming into our country illegally, we're wrong. I don't see how that makes sense. So I think that the reason that women are voting for Kamala Harris and the Democrats is that they believe that they are having their rights stripped away when they really are not.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's this kind of perverse redefinition of abortion. Abortion has been sold to women as another form of contraception. The life inside their belly isn't a human being, it's a nuisance, it's a parasite. And it can be gotten rid of because it's not a human being and it's just another form of contraception. The science is very clear on that. Science is on our side. We're winning. We know that something ineffable occurs. In the fertilization of the egg, a life is created, and not only a life. If you look at science, unique DNA. When women say, "My body, my choice," hang on a second. Your body doesn't have, 20 toes and 4 arms. There is a separate human being inside of you who not only has arms, legs, feet, fingers, a brain, a heart, they also have a genetic code that is completely and utterly unique, and which is the result of the two gametes meeting and a male and a female creating a new life. That's not Sebastian Gorka's opinion. That's science. There is a new DNA identity created. And as a result, ultimately, we'll win the argument because we know science, the more science we have about the unborn every single day, the more it is absolutely demonstrable that this is an independent human life that has a unique identity. Again, we're going back to the issue of indoctrination and brainwashing. These poor women have been told, no, that's not a life, that's a parasite and you can get rid of it and you won't have any consequences. No emotional trauma. I mean, I played the audio on my show this week from Mike Knowles interviewed a very brave lady who said, I had an abortion once and I told the doctor to keep me awake. And the doctor said, what do you mean? Why? Well, I want to make sure I never do this again, and I want to experience it. And the emotion in her voice as she broke down, explaining how her child was dismembered inside her. And then they saw the body parts, the parts removed from inside of her, being jettisoned into a bio-waste trash can in the corner of the abortion clinic. Every woman should be played that audio, and every young girl should be shown what an abortion actually results in and what it entails. Then then everybody would agree that it is inherently evil.
It truly is terrible when you think about it. And you know something about Tim Walz? He reminds me of a teenage boy that I can speak to any day of the week that would say, "Oh, I know what it's like to be a woman. I respect women because I have sisters. I have a mother. I'm around women." No. Tim Walz is trying to make himself more likable to the women so that he can help Kamala Harris get into the office so they can take control and brainwash more people than they have and Joe Biden has and so many Democrats have in the past. Even Tim Walz's entire family supports President Trump. So what do you think that says about him as not only just as a person in general? Because if even his family doesn't support him, that's gotta speak volumes.
Yeah, I didn't want to believe that image when I first saw it of his brother and all his family members in the Trump Vans T-shirts. But it was confirmed that that's a real thing, and they're all endorsing President Trump. Look, it just goes to the heart of who he is. An individual who's gone to communist China 31 times, who spent a year there during the pro-democracy Tiananmen demonstrations that were completely suppressed, and maybe 10,000 Chinese were murdered. A man who got married on the anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre. Sick, just totally perverse. And we haven't even discussed the stolen valor and the lying about his rank and leaving his unit after 24 years just because they were just about to deploy to Iraq, saying I carried a weapon of war in a war zone. I served for, 3 years in the reserves, in the equivalent of the National Guard in England. You just don't do, you don't accidentally say I served in Iraq. You don't accidentally say I carried a weapon of war in a war zone, and you don't do it again and again and again and again, and you don't make challenge coins for your office that have your fallacious rank engraved on the coin. Just a typical Democrat. I will lie about whatever it takes to get me into office. That's Tim Walz.
Exactly. And like you said, the fact that you served and J.D. Vance served, it is so wrong that he would even think about lying about how he ran away like a coward and then stole that valor and made himself, like I said, like Democrats do, out to be something he is not. He wants people to believe he is this amazing man and a hero when truly he is a coward. He's the exact opposite of what he claims to be.
And to say that, to denigrate not just J.D. Vance's service, who was an actual real Marine who went to a war zone, but then to denigrate on camera President Trump's service. It wasn't in a war zone, but President Trump was shot in the head by a Democrat donor. This is a man who instantly said, I'm coming back to Butler, Pennsylvania to finish my speech. This is a man who's on the road every single day, multiple events in the open air as well. And this is a man who was living a really nice life. 14 years, #1 TV show, Trump golf courses, Trump towers, billions of dollars, supermodel wife. And then he gives it up for no pay for 4 years. He gets called a racist, a misogynist, an Islamophobe, a white supremacist. And then this is the shocking thing. And I really, for those who don't know, my background, my baggage is my parents lived under communism. My father was arrested, persecuted, tortured, and imprisoned for his resistance to communism. So, I fight the way I fight because of that baggage I bring to the table, and I will not allow communists to take over this country. President Trump doesn't have that excuse. President Trump, is from Scotland, Germany, Ireland. He doesn't have family members who were tortured by secret police. He's a self-made building magnate from New York. So the idea that he's prepared to do it again, to stand in the breach for us, for free, to be attacked, to be called again a dictator, a Nazi, a white supremacist. Is there a greater service than that, except dying for your country? This is why President Trump has to win, just in some sense of poetic cosmic justice, that after what they did to him for the last 8 years, he can finally finish the job as the 47th and not just the 45th president. It's up to us, but we need to make that happen, God willing.
Absolutely. You know, the instinct of President Trump, and as he told all of us, is to fight, fight, fight. And the instinct of the Democrats is to run, run, run away and hide. That's all they've ever done. That's all they will ever do. And they will continue to do that if we stand back and let them, which is not okay. I would love to get... Oh, sorry, go ahead. I would love to get my voice out even more to the Gen Z vote, however I possibly can, just to get people to open their eyes just for a little while, for the benefit of our country and all of us.
I need to bounce in a second, but just two things that you could do for me. Number one, would you please tweet out what you just said and send it to me so I can retweet it, and do it with a picture of President Trump, because that was so powerful. You've kind of encapsulated everything we need to know about the next 59 days, that President Trump is about fight, 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 and the Democrats are about run, run, run. That's so powerful and so beautifully put. I'd like to promote a tweet from you to that effect. And then, I want to ask you one question. Of course. You're quite unique. What is it that made you take such a open and public stance to support the president? Tell me what your motivation was, Jordan.
Well, actually, from a very young age, I got introduced to politics from my mom. I owe her for that. And then I started on my own to watch the news, to learn on my own about everything that I was interested in, about the truth and lies in our country. And then I decided at 13 years old, I wanted to start an account and get the word out. And I never expected it to get as big as it has, but I'm so glad it has, and I'm so glad I've been able to get my voice out there.
Was there some event, apart from your amazing mom, was there some person or thing that made you say, okay, I'm going to have a Twitter account, I'm going to have a podcast? What happened?
Obama happened. I saw the way he was dividing our country, and then I see President Trump come in, and I'm like, greatest president we've ever had. He is fixing our country as best he can, and he will continue to do that if we let him, if the Democrats let him and don't stand in his way, which we all know they will continue to do if we allow them to do that.
Yeah. It's up to us. It's up to us. God bless you for doing what you're doing. And I thank your mother for her support of you.